Welcome back! Okay, so we're not actually having a book review video today because I want to instead do an update for my publishing vlogs because I haven't done one in a while, and for once, I actually have something to update! I have a book! Yes, I published The Librarian and the Ghost almost exactly a month ago. It is self-published. It is a cozy ghost story about a young woman named Olivia who gets her dream job as a live-in librarian in a public library that's housed in a Victorian mansion on this tiny New England island. And the library is haunted. Now, the story is just her learning about the ghost, getting to know the library, and getting to know more about herself and settle into her position in the library. And I love it. I think it's great. It's super low stakes. It's nice and feels like a warm cup of tea while sitting in front of a fireplace with a blanket and, you know, it's getting slightly dark outside. I love it. But I want to talk about the journey of how I got this book. And not how I wrote it, because that's a different thing. How I got it published. We're going to start with why I finally chose to self-publish. Because, yeah, I've gone back and forth on the decision of whether or not to self-publish for literally years at this point. And a lot of it always comes down to there are a lot of marketing and design-based skills required for a self-published author that I don't have, and I know I don't have them. But traditional publishing, I just haven't had any luck as of yet breaking through the gatekeepers, and I'm not willing to fight while the world is crumbling around me. Like, literally, the reason I finally decided to self-publish is I was, at the end of last year, feeling this deep sense that the world is crumbling around me, and if I'm gonna ever get a book out, it might as well be now. And so I decided to just go ahead and go forward with it. And I will also admit that part of the decision comes down to the fact that I've spent so much time on author spaces on social media that it has become abundantly clear to me that it is getting harder and harder and harder for a debut author with no connections in the industry to actually break in. Like, yeah, it does still happen. There are still debut authors who happen to have a spectacular query with a really interesting idea that hits the market at the exact right time, but they're surprisingly rare. A lot of the debut authors that the trad pub is picking up right now are self-published authors who have a successful self-publishing career. And so I'm just tired of waiting for lightning to strike and for my luck to finally come through. So instead I decided to just move forward and self-publish. But that meant I had to choose which book to self-publish. Because yeah, I have, at that point I had 9 completed manuscripts that, yeah, some of them I do want to make changes for them, but they are done and ready to start working on the process of publishing. And I had to choose which one. I had a couple of different, basically criteria to decide which one to publish, starting with the fact that several of the ones I've written are the beginning of series. And I know that. And some of them feel like a very solid completed piece. Some of them feel a little bit more like, oh yeah, this is the beginning of something else. And I didn't want to publish one of those first because I don't have the sequels written yet. I always planned on getting it moving forward in publication before I start writing the sequel because I don't want to waste roughly 2 years of my life on something that may never actually get published. But knowing that I'm moving forward with self-publishing, I do want to have started book 2 at least by the time that I publish book 1, because especially in the self-publishing sphere, people do expect book 2 to come out like 6 months later at the latest. So I need to be heavy into the process before I publish book 1. So I set those aside, but I still had, like, you know, 6 books to choose from. And how I decided from those, partially it had to do with the one that was on my mind at that moment, and partially it had to do with covers. Because I've never thought about what I want on my book covers, because I always assumed I was going to get traditionally published. And I know that most traditionally published authors have little to no say in what goes on their cover. And I didn't want to get my hopes up and have this idea in my head of what my cover's supposed to look like and then get pissed because it didn't look like that when the publisher gave me their cover. So instead I decided to just sort of not think about it, so I would appreciate whatever they gave me. And now that I was self-publishing, I do have to come up with my own cover. And it was harder than I thought it would be. Like, oh my god. And a lot of that is because I still think of what a fantasy cover should look like being the fantasy covers from the 90s, with a beautiful, hand-painted, photorealistic or almost photorealistic vista of a fantasy world with a dramatic character in front of it. Maybe even like 5 or 6 characters in an interesting scene. But the important thing is detail, photorealistic, and sweeping. All of those are things that cost a fuck ton when you're paying for them. Like, there's a reason that the publishing industry tends to be moving away from those covers. And yeah, the trend right now is for covers that are simplified. They tend to be text-based, and they will have indicators of what's going on in the book, but it tends to be like symbolic indicators. So for example, if you are writing a book set primarily with pirates and ships, you might have a blue cover with sort of wavy designs. The text is in like a pretty sort of a text that gives you the feeling of waves. There might be an anchor here, there might be a net over here, there might be like a harpoon, and that's it. And I hate those covers. To me, they are the opposite of evocative. I never want to pick one up because they give me nothing about what the characters actually are. And what makes me want to read a book is who the characters are. So I don't like these covers. And that means my mind was immediately going to covers I can't afford. And when I was trying to think of, no, you gotta fit in the trends, my mind is going, but I don't like those. And nothing I could come up with felt like it fit my books, it read as fantasy, and I could afford it. But this one, I had an idea for the cover. But also, as mentioned, it was the one on my mind at the moment. And I'll get to that in a minute. But cover-wise, the reason this one was easier for me to come up with a cover is because it's cozy. And there is a trend in specifically cozy fantasy, cozy mystery, cozy romance. All of the cozies have cartoony covers. Usually also pastel, and usually pretty simple, and I failed on the pastel and simple because me. But the cozy cartoony is a link, and cartoony covers are just a bit cheaper than a photorealistic cover because cartoon takes less time than photorealism. And also, I sort of knew someone that could do this style of cover, and I knew that in the back of my head, so that was a heavy selling feature for me. But once I had chosen which book to self-publish, I had to start actually moving forward with it. Now, for me, the first step of moving forward was sending it out to beta readers. This one had actually already had a reader, which is a bit rare for me. And largely because when I first started writing this one, I actually started writing, intention of writing a short story, and it got out of hand. And I was about 30K words into it when I realized there was no way in hell I was like cutting this back to be a short story. And I decided to just finish it and see what length it was. And when I came to what felt like the ending, I only had like 40K words, and also it didn't quite feel complete to me, so I literally just read through it to make sure it made some sense and sent it to my friend Jasmine being like, hey, could you just tell me, is this done? Like, is it ended? And her response was no, it's not. And I agreed, so I sort of set it aside for a while because I didn't know where to go with it next. Like, I had scenes in my head that I could add, but they felt like they were just adding scenes, not like actually building the story. And for 6 months, I sat there imagining different scenes, imagining different endings, imagining different scenarios, trying to really get to what is the heart of this story, what am I trying to say, what is the arc these characters are going through, and therefore, what should be the ending. And after a while, I did come up with something that I really liked. And I sat down and wrote it. I had to do a little bit of alteration to the ending that I already had, but not that much. And basically I added an epilogue. And I was like, oh my god, it feels complete now. I am at the story. And that was right at the moment that I was thinking about what to self-publish. So I was really excited about this one at that moment. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to move forward with that. But that meant I had already had an alpha read, basically. And at that point, I sent it out to several beta readers. I got some feedback. I sent it out to a couple more beta readers because the fun thing about readers is nobody ever agrees on everything, and I was getting different responses to some of my questions. So I sent it out to a couple more just to sort of reassure myself of where I was with it. I did a lot of heavy editing because I can't afford to pay for an editor. I really wish I could, and like, I agree with people when they say your book will be 100% more professional if you get it edited, but objectively, it's like $3,000 on the cheap end, and I don't have $3,000. So I had to basically self-edit. And I do think I am actually a very good editor. I've actually considered many times setting myself up as a professional freelance editor, and it's the business side of that that keeps making me go, oh, I don't know if I can do this. But because of that, I do feel very secure in my editing skills, but I also know self-editing is 100% harder than any other editing, because what you're reading is what your brain thinks is there, not what's really there. It does not matter how much you try to separate yourself from it, you will be reading what you think is on the page. And it does help to have, like, Microsoft Word, for example, has a text to voice that you can hit that button and it will read it aloud to you, and that will help you with things like if you've missed entire words from sentences, which, yeah, happens a lot. But it will not help you with things like homonyms, which I am terrible about. It will not help you with, like, punctuation. It will not help you with, like, does that sentence make sense to anyone who does not know what it's supposed to mean? And because of that, I took a lot of time very carefully reading over everything I'd written, going over it with a fine-tooth comb, reading it 5 or 6 times, reading it in different tones, trying to make sure that I knew that it was as free of typos as I could possibly manage. And I know there are a couple of typos in it, but traditionally published books have a couple of typos. I think I did a pretty good job. But then, of course, meanwhile, I'm talking to my cover designer. Now, my cover designer, I had a student that I taught way back in the day when I taught theater named August, and as August grew up, they joined the theater company me and my friend Jasmine had. We did a lot of work with August, and when I first started mentioning that I was considering self-publishing, Jasmine's very first response was, you should get August to do a cover for you. They now have a design degree. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't want to, like, put pressure on them. I don't want them to feel like they're obligated to do it. And what if it doesn't turn out right? And, like, what if we end up fighting? And I don't want that to go wrong. And Jasmine kept being like, they have a design degree. Like, they are used to professionally doing design now. You can contact them, and they will tell you no if the answer is no. And I was like, and I don't want them to feel pressured, like they have to do it for cheap. And over and over and over again until finally Jasmine was like, oh my god, just contact August. And I finally did. And August's response was, that sounds great, let's try it. I feel like they actually were excited, and admittedly it was over Messenger, so I may be reading stuff into this, but I feel like they were actually excited to get the chance to work on it, because it was their first ever book cover. They've done design, but they haven't done book covers, and it was a fun learning process for me, getting to actually work on that side as a customer for artists. Because my mom's an artist. My friends in high school were artists. My friends in college were artists. I have grown up surrounded by people doing commissions for others. And just, I've never had the money to pay someone to do a commission, and it was super fun. Especially considering I came to August with some pretty simple, not much sketched out there. Like, I was like, okay, I want a Victorian mansion's lobby with bookshelves, a library desk, and a librarian behind the desk. And that's all I had for them. And August had to talk me through things like, okay, do you want it wrap around? Do you want an image on the back? What do you want with the spine? What does the librarian look like? All these sort of details. And we had a couple of back and forth of sketches, and August brought me a lot of ideas. Like, it was August's idea to put, like, a stack of books as the spine, and it's my favorite detail on the cover, so I'm so happy with that. And, of course, we had a couple of, like, moments of me being like, hey, could you move this here? Could you change this? And annoyingly, I caused so many problems because I was like, hey, can you make the text on the spine a little bit bigger and the blurb on the back bigger? And that ended up causing so many formatting issues. But it was a great experience, and that is where the majority of my budget for this went. The only things I paid money to get in the publishing is I paid for my cover artist, I paid for ISBNs, because even though there is one person I talk to regularly on Threads who swears up and down you do not need to pay for ISBNs, that you can just run with the ones they give for free on Ingram or on Amazon, and that's fine. Every single other person I've ever talked to says, no, you need ISBNs that you pay for if you want to sell your book outside of those platforms. And I want to be able to sell my book wherever, so I went ahead and paid for that. And I also filed for my copyright, which technically you don't have to do. If you've written something, you own the copyright for it. From the moment you've written it, you own the copyright. But proving that is another matter. And filing your copyright is how you prove it. So like if someone were to take my book and sell it with their name on it, me having my copyright notice means that I actually could do something about it. It's pretty much the only way I'm going to be able to file a DMCA takedown notice, be able to sue them for stealing my book. I need my copyright notice for that. So I'm happy that I went ahead and paid for those two things. And other than that, originally I just bought one author's copy. Since then, I've saved up enough money that I bought 10 copies to try to sell in real life, but I'm not buying any more until I've sold those 10. And that's all the money that I've spent here. Let's talk about putting the book itself together. So I did have to do my own formatting because of course I could not pay for that, and I used Ingram Sparks' book builder to put this book together, and I had given myself originally 2 weeks to get this done, and that was not enough time. And I reassured myself too much when I started because formatting the inside was super simple. Like, oh my god, the book builder, I literally just copy and pasted each chapter and put it in the book builder and it turned out perfect. Now, I did have to pick which of the formats they have to choose from, and it does annoy me because it seems like so many when you first start. There's like 30 different formats you can choose from, but then it comes down to the fact that there's no alterations within the formats. Like, the format will have what does a chapter start look like, what does the number, where if there's any design work up there, if there's what the subheads and the chapter heads look like, where your name is, where the book title is, where the page number is, whether or not there's that enlarged letter, the font, the size of the font, all of that is pre-programmed in each of the 30 formats, and you can't make any alterations. So like you can't choose like, oh, I want the New York style header because I like the pretty curvy lines, but I hate the font for New York, so I'm going to go with Savannah font. You can't do that. No, it's just that simple. And that's irritating, but that does mean that you can't really mess it up once you have it programmed. Like, it's not going to come out looking all insane and weird with like your text on the wrong side of the page or anything like that because it's all programmed in. But where I ran into trouble was formatting the cover. And I should have known better because I did already produce a book from Ingram Sparks with Drunks of the French Quarter Theater, and what I struggled with the most was formatting the cover. But I had assumed that was because I was just using a photograph I took as the cover, and that was the problem, and it turns out no, it's just a crappy problem. So first, there are two different ways when you're using the book builder that you can enter an image onto the cover, and one is as a background and the other is as an object. And the background, every time I entered the image, it would show up with a weird border. Like, there'd be a strip of white down at the bottom, a strip of white over here, and a strip of white at the very top. And to make it even worse, I couldn't pretend this was a design choice because they were different sizes. And I couldn't get rid of them, and I was crying. And so I tried instead entering it as an object. But when you stretch the object, all of the lines to indicate you're at the edge of the book and like this is where the spine is, they all disappear. And so I'd have to move it, and then I'd have to click off and say, please bring those lines back, and the lines would reappear, and I'd be like, okay, it's in the wrong place, let me shift it, and then I would do it again and again and again and again and again. And when I finally thought I had it right, I went ahead and approved, and like 2 days later I get an email from Ingram going, nope, sorry, you're outside the lines. And I'm like, oh my god. And I went through, I think, I approved it, I think, 5 times. And part of the problem was, it turns out, way back when I told August, please make the font on the spine and on the back bigger, I made them make it bigger than was allowed on Ingram. So it was bleeding offside the sides, and they're like, you can't do that. So we had to shrink that, and August was very nice about it and did it for me, but I did that. That did mean I have to message back and forth to August a couple of times being like, hey, could you get me the exact same cover but shrink the size again, please? And it was a monster. And on top of that, there's the DPI/PPI, which is the size of the file, and it kept telling me it was too small, and I'm literally looking at the file going, but the numbers are the correct numbers, I don't understand. But I did finally get something approved, like 2 days after the book was supposed to go live. And luckily, I knew that I was probably going to misorganize something, so I never announced what day the book was going to come out. And I was very happy with that when I realized there was no way in hell the book was coming out the day I said it would. And that also meant that when I got my author proof, I approved the books to go live immediately the second I got them, and that was 5 days after the original release date. But nobody knew, so it was fine. And honestly, it was a bad idea to release it on April 1st anyway, because that's April Fool's Day. That's a terrible idea. So I'm glad with how it turned out. But that does lead me into marketing, because the reason I could get away with that is I did none of the pre-publication marketing. Because traditional wisdom says that if you are self-publishing a book, you first want to announce the date it's going to go live. Quite often you'll have a a title announcement, you'll have a cover reveal. Sometimes you do countdowns until you do the cover reveal. Like, people will say it's 5 days until you see my cover, 4 days until you see my cover, 3 days until you see my cover, and you'll try to drum up enthusiasm before the book comes out. You'll try to get a lot of pre-orders, and I didn't do any of that. And a lot of the reason I had chosen not to was I was afraid that my scheduling would get a bit wonky, but also because I don't see the point in pre-orders. Like, yeah, if you're trying to get on the New York Times bestseller list, you need pre-orders, but I knew I wasn't going to end up on the New York Times bestseller list. And in the end, I don't care if you bought my book 2 days before it went live or a year after it was published. I just want you to want my book. Like, I was perfectly okay with, like, just it picking up steam after it was already published. That was always my goal. Because my goal here is to start building a backlist. Because I know that if I want to be a professional author, I have to have a backlist that sells pretty regularly. And that means, like, putting out a lot of books. But my marketing, because I have no money to spend on marketing, I have mostly been focusing on what I can do myself. I can't afford to buy ads on Amazon, on Facebook, on, like, I don't know, anywhere else. So instead, I have been talking it up where I can. And the majority of my marketing that I planned, I started collecting memes that reminded me of this book about right when I decided I was going to self-publish it. And, like, literally any meme that involved librarians, any memes that involved ghosts, any memes that involved, like, introverts and loving to read and being isolated at home, all these things I went ahead and saved in a file called Librarian and the Ghost Memes. And as soon as it went live, I spent that entire night pre-programming posts on Threads to go live, one for every day for about 2.5 weeks, that were just like a meme, and if you like this meme, you'll like my book. And I tried out different things, like sometimes I put the link directly in the post, sometimes I put the link as the first comment, sometimes I didn't put the link at all because I know Threads is weird about links. But the important thing is I tried different hours for it to go live. I tried different things to see what would actually work. I also did post some of these on Blue Sky, but not nearly as many, because I've never figured out if I can pre-program, like, things to go live on Blue Sky. And also, I just don't get that many clicks on Blue Sky. I don't really see the point when it's like, I don't want to spend hours and hours putting together a post that will get 1 like and probably be seen by 10 people. Especially considering there's one person that I talk to on Blue Sky. I love her to death. She's Shannon. She's a great person. But she's pretty much the only person I talk to on Blue Sky. So it was just sort of like, I don't really see a huge point in really focusing that much on Blue Sky. And on Instagram, I haven't done much either because I just don't like Instagram. My other main focus has been Facebook and YouTube. YouTube, I haven't made as many shorts as I wanted to about this one because I've sort of run out of ideas already, and I need to come up with some more ideas of how to make a video about this book. But I did a couple posts on Facebook, and I do think that's where most of my sales have come from, because I'll be honest here, most of my sales have been friends and family, people I actually know. I've sold, at this date, I think 18 copies of this book, which is not bad for a debut self-published author with a relatively small platform with no marketing. Like, objectively, this is about as much as I could have hoped for. And yeah, I will admit, I did get my hopes up. I dreamed the night before it came out that some big YouTuber would find it and I'd sell 400 copies in the first month and I would have a career that took off immediately. But I knew that was a pipe dream. I knew that this was going to be a slow process of building. So 15 copies is not bad, especially considering, 17 copies is not bad, especially considering I know for a fact that I can trace about, I think it's like 9 copies I know for sure who they went to. And after that, those are people I don't know. And like there's one that I know for sure I sold from a YouTube short because somebody commented, hey, can you get me the link for the Australian copy? And I sold a copy in Australia that night. So I know I've sold one from YouTube shorts. I know that there's one that somebody commented on a Threads post roughly the same, and I know I sold that one. There are a couple more that I suspect I sold through Threads. At least one that I know I sold through Blue Sky, and my friend from Blue Sky, Shannon, did a review of the book, and I think I might have sold a few through that, but that means that there are copies out there that are not my friends and family. There are copies out there that someone might read this and be like, oh my god, I just read this great book, you should read it too! And that's how this book is going to take off, and I know that. Now, I am secretly hoping that I will magically come into a little bit of money in the next couple of months and be able to run one itty-bitty ad on Amazon to see if it works, to see if it gets any sales. But my next really big steps are audiobooks in the next book. Yes, I do want to produce an audiobook of this, and I think I have most of it lined up. First of all, I have an acting degree. I know that I can read my own book. And I think my book, actually, my voice fits this book. So I'm perfectly okay with reading my own audiobook. My problem is my mic. I have a friend, a fellow author who is part of one of my author groups, who actually has agreed to, he actually reached out to me being like, hey, if you want to record an audiobook, I'm trying to get into the business of editing audiobooks. So if you record it and send me your raw files, I will do the editing for you. And I'm like, that's amazing. But I sent him a sample with the mic that I have, and he agrees the mic's not quite good enough quality. And that makes sense, considering that mic was free. I literally got that mic because a friend was at the Tux Mardi Gras parade, caught this mic as a throw, and was like, Elaine might want this. And so, yeah, it's a free microphone, and that's the only microphone I have. Not quite. I do actually have a mic that I bought from Amazon, thinking it will be slightly better quality than the free one, and turns out, no, it's worse quality. But you might have noticed that my YouTube videos, the thing that is not the best quality in the world is the audio, and I acknowledge that, but mics are expensive, guys. So until I can figure out getting a better mic, the audiobook's probably not going to come out anytime soon. But I do also have another book already out with beta readers. One of the books that I wrote a couple of years ago called Bones of Stone, I sent out to a couple of different beta readers where I'm waiting to hear back from most of them. But I already have a cover designed for it, and that one, yeah, I'm doing myself. And that's sort of the reason I chose to go with that one next, because it was the one that I think I could put together myself, and I like it. I think it looks good, so I'm really hoping to move forward with that one. But I'm in the sort of similar position with that one as I was with this one. Unless I magically sell about, 2,000 copies in the next couple of days, I'm not going to be able to afford a professional editor, and I know that. I also don't have the money for marketing it, and I don't have a stockpile of memes for it, so I'm going to have to figure out a different way to market that one. But I am planning on producing another book soon. I also know that I need to work on my website, as in I need to have one, and it's just every single time I sign into those website creators, I freak out because I don't know what the hell I want to put on this website. Similarly, when I come up with like, oh, I need to put it together a newsletter, I don't know what the hell I'd say in a newsletter. I have signed on to a couple of different authors' newsletters just to figure out what the hell they say in them, and I will admit, I don't see the point because I don't find them interesting myself. Like, I want to read people's books. I don't want to read about their process of writing the book. And I know one person in my entire life who has ever bought a book from a newsletter. So I'm just like, I know a lot of authors swear by them. I know authors swear that this is the only form of an audience that you have ownership over. But I just don't really see it that way. And especially considering they're like, oh, but your threads could be taken away tomorrow, your YouTube could die, your Blue Sky could be canceled. I'm like, yeah, and so could my email address. Like, these things happen. If you have everything in one basket online, then yeah, there's a chance that basket will catch on fire and disappear. But because of that, I have not moved forward with newsletters. I have not moved forward with websites, and I need to do both. Or at least one. I do have a link tree, which, That's like websites for those of us who don't want to create websites. And I'm, of course, still writing. The book I'm working on right now is actually in edits. It's called Merrow's Home. And I originally started it because I was like, you see so many mermaid books. I want to see a merman book. And I swear to God, as soon as I finished it, I started seeing merman books everywhere. There's one that I'm seeing all over the internet right now that looks beautiful, and I don't want to read it because I'm in the process of editing one and I don't want it to corrupt me and, you know, sneak in and change my book that way. Because, yeah, I probably will be having this one ready to send out to agents, and yes, I do plan on querying this one as well, in probably 6 months-ish. And if so, then I'm hoping that the merman trend will still be trending so people will be interested in it. But I love this book, and I think it's got a lot of good in it, and I am going to eventually self-publish it if no agents pick it up. But I'm still hoping to get that traditional publishing deal. There are just so many doors that are open to traditionally published books that are not open to self-published books. Objectively, I know that, yeah, at best, if I could ever put on my big girl panties and be brave enough, I can maybe contact a dozen bookstores and ask them to shelve my book, and out of those dozen, I'll be lucky if I get 2. Whereas if I was traditionally published, I'd probably be in all of them. If I want to do like an interview on YouTube, if I am myself a self-published author, it's going to be hard as hell to find a book influencer who wants to do an interview with me, who does not already know me. Whereas if I was traditionally published, I probably could get a couple of them easily. And chances are, my publisher would line some of this stuff up. And yeah, publishers don't do a huge amount of marketing for authors. But even just having your book in their catalog is going to get it in front of a lot more eyes than I will ever be able to on YouTube, Threads, Blue Sky, all the social media platforms. But I'm not willing to give up on my books. I think my books are really good. I think my writing is good. I think my stories are good. I think my characters are spectacular. I want people to be able to read my books. And if that means doing it myself, then yeah, I'll do it my damn self.